Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. We know that, that on our Facebook page, we did acknowledge that we were gonna live stream this meeting also. So we know that a lot of people that are paying attention will get phone calls. While we would get phone calls from some of our constituents that are watching from home. I'm going to ask that Darren start us off and make a presentation. We're going to listen to the engineers, and we're going to be part of the audience to make comments. We got some of my good friends here that I know they're going to make some comments. Okay, Darren, could you start us off?
Yes, sir. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darian Warren, and I am a representative of Wagner Engineering. And so before we get started, I would like to recognize a few people in the audience that's a part of our engineering team, has helped the county and helped Supervisor Banks implement some of these important drainage improvement projects. And so first of all, I would like to recognize Nick Ivey. He's the director of Mississippi Soil and Water Conservation Commission, and so that is one of the agencies that is funding the Madison County Bear Creek Watershed Project. Also here in terms of with the Wagner Engineering team, we have Bill McDonald. We also have Andrew Jenkins, Calandra Jenkins, and we also have Zophie Damish, who is here as well. And also, before I go any further, Supervisor Carl Banks just kicked us off and turned everything over to me, but also would like to recognize Supervisor Paul Griffin, who is also here, one of the supervisors for the Madison County Board. So we're thankful for this opportunity to give this important project update as it relates to the Madison County stormwater management efforts. So just kind of a little bit of background. About a year ago, the Madison County Board of Supervisors had a vision that was pushed and led by Supervisor Banks to implement a countywide stormwater improvement plan. And so this plan also included a 5-year implementation plan that basically identified across the county various drainage problems and initiatives that needed to be addressed. And so we all know in terms of trying to secure federal dollars, it's important that you have a plan to present to identify how the funding, if awarded, how that funding is going to be used. So the county took this plan and basically used this plan to secure federal dollars to implement some of the projects that we're going to present here today. And so just kind of an outline of what we're going to talk about in terms of project updates, kind of what I just mentioned, the countywide stormwater management program, which started this entire initiative, the funding accomplishments that the Madison County Board of Supervisors have been able to benefit from, the Madison County EWP program, the City of Canton Drainage Project, which is a specific initiative that the City of Canton officials are implementing to help address drainage issues within the City of Canton as well. And also, as we just mentioned, the Bear Creek Watershed Plan that is funded through NRCS and Soil and Water Conservation Commission. So just a little bit about the countywide stormwater management program. As we mentioned, this is what the Board of Supervisors initiated to get us to a point of where we are today. And kind of what I've already mentioned, this plan basically identified problematic areas across the county. I think there were a total of about 42 problematic sites that not only included the rural areas of the county, but also within the municipalities inside of Madison County as well. So once we identified these problematic areas, we basically took those, prioritized the needs to begin addressing these chronic flood problems across the county, including the City of Canton. And then the board adopted a 5-year action plan, which is being implemented now, which has also helped enable the county to gain access to multiple funding sources that we're going to talk about throughout this update. So just kind of a update on those funding accomplishments that we mentioned. So the Board of Supervisors were able to take this plan and basically get congressional authorization for about $10 million through the Army Corps of Engineers to help support the implementation of the various drainage projects that were identified in the countywide plan. In addition to that, as we mentioned, the NRCS Emergency Watershed Protection Program, which NRCS stands for the Natural Resource Conservation Services, following some 2022 storm events where the city of Canton and other areas of Madison County experienced significant flooding. The Madison County Board of Supervisors and the city of Canton elected officials were able to work together to secure fundings through this Emergency Watershed Protection Program to secure funding, which is cost shared, to address flooding within the city of Canton also. Furthermore, there was a state MCWI grant, the Municipality, County, and Water Infrastructure Grant. This grant was administered through MDEQ. And so the city of Canton was able to take advantage by leveraging information identified through the county's plan. The city of Canton was able to leverage that plan to go after funding themselves offered through the State Department of Environmental Quality. And so that's a project that we're going to talk about here. And again, the Watershed and Flood Prevention Program, in which the Bear Creek Watershed Project, which many of you have heard about over the last few months, where the county is the local sponsor of where an initial allocation of $23.5 million was allocated to address flooding throughout the Bear Creek watershed. And again, we'll get into the details of that in slides later in the presentation. So the Madison County Emergency Watershed Protection Program. So as I mentioned a few months ago, this was a project that was identified as a result of some historical rain events that occurred, I think, back in August of 2022. And basically, this EWP program supports funding projects where flooding has caused erosion or damage to drainage areas that contributes a hazard to infrastructure, utilities, and property. And so we were able to, the county and the city of Canton entered into a collaborative agreement, a cooperative agreement, where they partnered and pursued funding through this program and was able to secure funding to address some erosion issues in the East Sims Street area of the city of Canton. And so this map here just shows the location of where East Sims is located within the city limits of Canton. And so these pictures here just show existing conditions of the area in East Sims that these funds that this project is funding. So you see here where you have a drainage way, a ditch where the slopes have begun to erode. And you also have a utility here that is being exposed. You have where erosion is beginning to encroach into the roadway. You have a utility pole here. So these type of projects or these type of issues are issues that this particular program looks for in terms of being able to fund. And so in terms of addressing this project, this is just a schematic design that just basically shows, as a part of this project, is basically going to include stabilizing and rocking this ditch, basically to eliminate the erosion that's causing encroaching into the utilities and the roadway. And it's also going to help promote proper drainage within the East Sims area. And this is also going to connect to a larger project that the city of Canton is initiating that's also going to address this exact ditch that traverses further down East Sims. And so we'll talk about that a little later also. So the City of Canton Drainage Improvement Project. So as I mentioned, this project, the City of Canton design for this project was completed several months ago, and it was identified as a prime project to take advantage of funds that was offered through the MCWI grant program. So after completing design and after discussions and basically reviews of the county's stormwater plan, we identified, submitted this project to secure this funding, and the city was successful in securing $1.3 million to support the implementation of this particular project, which includes basically 7 sites, which you see listed here: Sisney Avenue, East Sim Street, Jackson Street, Kennedy Street, Liberty Village Cove, Lily Drive, and Ness Street. And so these projects, there's multiple improvements that are going to be included across the city. These sites anywhere from culvert replacements, increasing the size of culverts to promote proper drainage. There are some areas, for instance, Liberty Village Cove, where there's a creek drainage way that is experiencing erosion, so making erosion repairs. So there's several initiatives that are going to be covered in this particular project. And so let me bag up a little bit and go back to the EWP project. So as I stated, this is a project that the Madison County Board of Supervisors was the sponsor for and partnered with the city of Canton to help fund the local cost share of this particular project. Last week, I believe it was, the Board of Supervisors actually approved the bid to go to construction for this particular project. So we understand that a lot of planning and design has to go into these projects. If there's federal dollars involved, there also has to be coordination with federal agencies, making sure environmental clearances are covered. So this particular project, we're excited. We know it's important to actually see shovels in the ground and actually see construction getting started. So this is one of many initiatives that supports the overall stormwater initiative across the county, and in particular, addressing the flooding issues and mitigating flooding issues in the city of Canton. So the Board of Supervisors awarded this bid last week in the amount of $153,000 in terms of construction costs. So the federal funding received for this project will cover those construction costs, where NRCS will pay for 75% of those costs, and the Madison County Board of Supervisors, in partnership with the city of Canton, will cover the 25% local match for this particular project. So that was exciting news for both Madison County and leadership and the city of Canton leadership. So going back to this, the City of Canton Drainage Improvement Project, as stated, this project is ready to go to construction. Right now, where we are, we had to get some environmental clearances for this particular project, one being permitting through the Corps of Engineers, which all documentation has been submitted, and so we anticipate here within the next 30 to 45 days, we'll receive a response or approval for that particular permit. And so the next step for this project to improve, address the drainage in these areas, the next step will be to bid this project out. So we anticipate being able to bid this project out within the next couple of months, early 2024, to get ready to go to construction for this particular project as well. So the Bear Creek Watershed Plan and Environmental Assessment. So at this time, I'm going to ask Bill McDonald to come up and give an update on the Bear Creek project.
Thank you, Darian. As Darian mentioned, the Bear Creek Watershed Plan and Environmental Assessment is a project. It's a cooperative initiative between Madison County and the NRCS and the Mississippi Soil and Water Conservation Commission. It's funded through a program in the NRCS account known as the Watershed and Flood Prevention Operations Account. NRCS, in this case, in Mississippi, provides the funding for these type watershed plans throughout the state. And the Mississippi Soil and Water Conservation Commission, in partnership with NRCS, executes most of those projects. And so it's a close federal-state partnership and that works with local units of government like Madison County. So this program began the first of this year, And the funding was allocated specifically to the Bear Creek watershed. And what you see here is a representation of the Bear Creek watershed. If you look at the county, you can see that Bear Creek watershed, it's about 170 square miles. And you can see it's in the heart of the county, right in the center of the county, but between just right in the middle. And sort of contrary to what we expect when we look at a map, we kind of expect things to flow upward to downward. We're actually looking at a flow. The flow in Bear Creek comes here in the southwest, and it flows northward and then takes a turn and flows northwestward into the Big Black River. So it's quite an extensive watershed, and it covers a lot of territory. This is southern, the northern limits of the city of Madison. This is Gluckstadt, and then this is Canton. So it covers most of the urbanized areas of Madison County. And that watershed is the extent of this plan and assessment. The goals of the plan are twofold, just from a big picture: flood protection, flood prevention, and water quality. The primary goal, as stated in the NRCS program, is for flood protection and flood prevention. But we have secondary goals related to water quality, and all of this ultimately works together. If you do one, you're gonna have impacts on the other. So the first thing we did as part of the watershed plan was to try to identify the primary problems. And you may not think that's such a big deal. Everybody knows what the problems are, right? We're having flooding, and most everybody knows where those flooding problems are. But to document those things and to quantify them and to analyze them clearly is quite a challenge. But that we have done that, and for the most part have identified what we might call the critical areas, or the high hazard, or the high flood-prone areas. And they're just as you would expect. The two areas that we've highlighted here on this map are the city of Canton, the urbanized area of the city of Canton, and then the area around Gluckstadt. And that's where most of, we all understand, that's where most of the development is in this part of Madison County. But the next couple of slides will focus on those areas and really identify in a little more clarity the areas we're talking about. This graphic here is very illustrative. It's very telling, because what you're looking at here is the heart of Canton. You see down here in blue, that blue area is what FEMA calls the special flood hazard area. That's what we think of as the mapped flood zone. That's what flood insurance rate maps illustrate as the flood hazard area. So that's what that is. But if you can envision what's happening, these purple and yellow dots represent structures. Those are buildings. Most of those are residential structures. Some of those are commercial retail establishments, but those are structures that are inhabited day in and day out. And as you can see, all of those that we have identified are in the flood hazard area. So here in this part here, this is the main Bear Creek channel. You can see Bear Creek kind of winding through there. This is Bachelor Creek up here, in a couple of tribs that come off of that. But you can see all the structures that are located, particularly clustered here in those areas of Bachelor Creek and Bear Creek. And that's problematic. So that's one of the issues that we run into, is when you have structures that are located in the flood hazard area. Another thing is blockages, just to put it simply, blockages in the flood path or the floodway, the floodplain. Now, this just to get you oriented, this is the main Bear Creek channel as it comes through the south part of Canton. This is I-55. Here's Peace Street, 22. Here's the railroad. Here's 51. So you kind of got your bearings here. Now what we did is we took this terrain and a lot of other data sets that are available, and through some two-dimensional computer modeling, we put a 100-year storm event, a 1% annual chance occurrence storm event on that grid, and then ran the model to see where the water flows and how the water relates, and then what happens in terms of depth, flood depth, and in terms of flood width. And so watch this little animation. So here's the flow coming from Upper Bear, and it comes down and makes that turn, and then it comes in south of Canton. Right here south of Canton, Bear Creek and Little Bear converge, and then not too far north, Bachelor Creek, and it all converges right here in Canton. So if we run that again, you see what's happening. Look at the railroad. See, there's the railroad. And so Bear Creek comes down, flowing down through here, and it hits that railroad, and as much as possible goes through the main opening of Bear Creek. But you can see what happens to the rest of it. It runs northward along the railroad embankment until it finds another place to go under, and then it slips through there. And so it all converges again back in the floodway of Bear Creek. But then it starts to hit, the landfills over here. Here's the old garbage dump. It's now the Pistol Range right here. Here's, there's about 5 or 6 wastewater treatment lagoons in that area. So we got all these impediments located right there where the water wants to go. So what happens? It hits those things and it finds the best path it can. But when it's constricted, it rises in elevation. So that's one of the, I really like this graphic because it illustrates the way that the water flows and the way that it reacts to the natural topography and the unnatural topography as it's been altered. So that's another issue that we've identified is blockages in the floodway. There are restrictive road crossings. Here's an example of hot water ditch as it crosses I-55. You see it comes right through here. Here's Peace Street. It crosses Peace Street, kind of goes out here into the open grassland, and then it hits I-55. And that what you're looking at is the opening beneath I-55. And that's, again, pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? And so that's an example, but that's not the only example of that kind of thing. Let's move upstream, back up into the uplands to the Upper Bear, up around Gluckstadt. So what you're looking at, this is Gluckstadt area. Here's 55 again, sort of you can see what's happening on the west side, and then this is the east side, and this is Bear Creek kind of coming down through here. And this is a tributary that comes from the southeast. But again, you got the same situation where if you plot the flood hazard maps, the flood insurance rate maps, you've got quite a few structures in those flood hazard areas. And here's a case where you got alterations to the natural floodway. Now, this is very similar to what I just showed you in Bear Creek. But in this case, I call these alterations in the floodway because here you've got, a bear coming down through here and a major tributary coming here, and they want to spread out and just flow through this wide open floodplain. But when we go in there and build things, and look, I'm an engineer, I'm not against building things. But we have to consider where we're building them and how we're building them. Because when we go in there and build things in those floodways, then that's an example of what I'm calling altering the floodway. And so again, if we do our little cartoon, the same kind of thing, you can see what begins to happen. Here's Bear Creek, the main channel coming down through here, and it's doing okay, but you see this major tributary, it hits I-55 and a little bit slips under here, but then a lot of it heads north along the embankment until it finds another opening up here closer to Gluckstadt. And then all that comes in here and it squeezes between 55 and the partway east, and then it spreads out a little bit, and then it runs up here and finds another opening. So you can see the water's trying to flow naturally where it would otherwise naturally flow. It's trying to find somewhere to go. It's got to find somewhere to go. It's going to find somewhere, but as it does that, if it's too restricted, again, the level is going to rise. It's going to put people and properties at risk, and the flood impact is going to spread out. So enough about that. This one is another very, very instructive picture. This is the whole Bear Creek watershed outlined. And so what you're looking at is, this is just sort of a 18 or 19-year progression starting back in 2001. The bright areas, that's what we call impervious area. That's streets, parking lots, rooftops, anything that is impervious, that prevents water from absorbing into the ground. So it hits that pavement and it runs until it finds a place to either run off or absorb. And so if you see, as development happens, and development's a good thing, there are a lot of good benefits, but one of the impacts is as development increases, impervious area increases. And as that happens, then the water has less and less places to absorb naturally into the watershed, into the ground. And so it's got to run off. And we know the results of that then, right? So this is just another very instructive way to look at problems. So this particular problem is an increase in impervious area in the watershed. So all these things, encroachments, structures in the hazard area, altering the floodplain with construction, taking away pervious areas where the water can absorb into the ground. All of these contribute, and they work together to create these problems. So possible solutions. Well, there are three things you can do from a big picture. You can reduce the water that's coming into the area of risk. And so you either hold it back. We can't decrease it. What's going to come is going to come. We have no control over the natural rainfall or the storm frequency, but we can control what happens when it hits the ground. So we can either hold it back, and that means you build a big old flood prevention dam or structure to hold it back, and then release it after the rain has gone. And what you do is you dampen the effect of those storm peaks. Or you can remove the water faster. You can build huge, wide channels all the way to the river to get the water out as fast as possible. Or you can remove the risk. And removing the risk means when you can't control the flow, when you've done everything you can to prevent the flooding or the risk, then you take people and property out of harm's way. And that's through voluntary buyouts or relocations, floodplain preservation policies, those kinds of things. So in actuality, to solve the problems in the Bear Creek watershed involve all of these. Multiple alternatives within all of these examples. So we got structural alternatives, things like flood control structures, building a dam to control floods, building retention or detention basins to control the frequency or the intensity of storm events or flood flows that relate from the flood events. Flood protection structures like big old levees and flood walls and things like that. We've seen those in places. Or enhancing the capacity of channels to carry the water. All of these are structural because we're going to go in and we're going to tear up the ground and build something. All right, and those are more impactful from an environmental standpoint most of the time. But an example of that is we call this one the big old dam, alternative, where you look, is there a place where you could actually construct a flood control dam or structure to hold the water back during the peak events, and then when the storm passes to release it so that you're dampening that peak effect and hopefully taking elevation off the flood. And here's just something, we're in, as far as the program overall, we're at the stage of the program where we're evaluating all of these types of things in detail. So we looked at, for instance, if you could come here in the main Bear Creek floodway, come up here somewhere where you have some elevation and put as low impact as possible structure across there, a dam, flood control dam, not to make a huge reservoir, but to have a structure there that in times of peak flow, it would hold the peaks back and then release them on a controlled basis. If you did that, we've just, on a very high level, cursory way, we've determined that you could take several feet off the 100-year flood by doing that. But then you got other impacts. Those are very costly type projects. You've got a lot of physical impacts to the environment. So you got to take all of these type things in mind. But that's a potential measure. That is one potential thing that could be done. And things like that, channel widening projects, straightening channels, widening channels, those kinds of things that structurally improve the ability to get water out faster. But then there are non-structural alternatives. And these are things like agricultural best management practices in the watersheds, up in the upper parts of Bachelor Creek, out in the Tilda Bogue, which is primarily a agricultural type watershed and land use. Cover crops, terracing, stream buffers, things like that. A non-structural alternative is voluntary buyouts. If people are just in areas of repetitive loss, and it's very difficult to reduce the impacts of flood risk, there are options for buying properties out and relocating properties. There are perpetual easements. You can restore floodplain areas with some type of easement in perpetuity that will preserve that area in a natural state and keep development from encroaching in that area. Policies. This is big. This you don't see any dirt move on the ground necessarily. That happens in this room right here. But that's things like development ordinances and floodplain management ordinances and land use management ordinances. Decisions that you make as a public body to not prevent development, but to control it and manage it in a more suitable way that's more considerable to the floodplain. And then there are preservation and restoration. And there's a lot of potential in these type projects where you preserve certain areas. You maybe can't get a lot of benefit from actually building a big structure to impound water, but you can protect that area from future development by preserving it. You can go in there and retrofit areas that have been developed. You can return them as much as possible to their natural state. And so these are restoration projects and preservation projects. As an example of that, you could find a place, that's in the floodplain, and you could do something like this. This is just a concept, sort of a prototype concept, and that's what you see over on these exhibit boards over here. But here's a place where, here's a natural, this represents a natural channel or floodway. You could go in there and do a minor structure just to, impound a little bit of water to create a water feature. You could take, the main area of the floodway and preserve it, create a preserve, do wetland restoration or preservation in there. You could do wildlife, photo blinds in there where people can go in there and photograph wildlife. You can, all these are just amenities that are examples of the kind of things you could do. Public recreation, public use, plantings, in and around the water. You can do different tiers of development in the water itself, or different types of planting, different types of vegetation. All of this serves to protect and restore the watershed. And so it impacts water quality. It improves the water quality because the water flows into this area and it spreads out and it slows down and it absorbs, the environment absorbs more of it. It promotes wildlife habitat. It filters out some of the water so that as it goes downstream, it's cleaner. And it holds back as much as possible. You can use these type facilities to hold back the water during peak storm events. So this has a lot of benefits, not to mention the public recreation and public use and quality of life. That's a big consideration when we talk about considering impacts to the environment. We're also talking about the human environment. And the federal government, when it allocates money to programs like this, it requires that you take those types of social and quality of life impacts into consideration just as much as economic impacts and economic benefits. So all that, so that's why a project like this could have a big impact on the watershed. this is, what some of that can look like. Here's a somewhat urbanized area, but you got this this area where you've preserved this land to restore some of the natural watershed functions. This is a more localized application, maybe in a residential area or a commercial area where you have natural drainage way, but you can do plantings, you can do bioswales and things like that slow the water down, allow the water to seep into the ground rather than just collecting it in a curb and gutter situation and piping it out to the stream. That has a lot of benefit, but that's a localized thing you can do in a more isolated situation. These are just, the types of amenities you could have at a watershed park or preserve like we're talking about. And again, those are the things that we've illustrated over here on these display boards. And that's really it. Supervisor, we're here to help you answer any questions that anyone might have. But that's what we wanted to present in terms of the things that the county has been actively participating in over the last 12 months or so for the benefit of Madison County.
Okay. Anybody feel free to have any questions, ask away, and let's talk about where are we going, where are we, and where are we going. My question, and I'll start first, and I get it, there's going to be multiple questions on multiple things that you're working on to see what it's going to take to stop flooding again. You showed the barrier that 55 has created. And you showed a southern portion where it's coming through. We slow down the water getting to Canton, but we got to get it through Canton. We feel here in Canton that we have a great need to get this done. Rain season shows up, and here goes the boats to our houses and the flood water. We need, we want to see shelters, we want to see work being during term. Planning is can't go anywhere without a plan to know how to get there, but we like to see more speed. Presentation was a good presentation to tell us how complex this is. I'd like to see more speed.
If I can address Supervisor Banks' statement. To address Supervisor Banks' statement about speed, and it kind of goes back to the comment I made earlier that ultimately you want to get to construction. And so we recognize and understand when the funding was identified for this larger complex project, the Bear Creek watershed project, that $23 million not only included funding for the planning and design that Supervisor Banks just mentioned, but that the bulk of that is for construction. And so the planning and environmental phase that we're in now, we're working on a 18-month schedule, which we started in December of 2022, if I remember correctly. We started out with I believe a 24-month schedule, and and taking into consideration what Supervisor Banks just mentioned, and talking with Supervisor Griffin and other supervisors, we understand and recognize there's a dire need to address the flooding in Canton, and this is one of many projects, which is a major project to help execute the plan, 5-year plan that we talked about earlier. So that 24 months, in terms of to speed up the process to get to construction, we're now on an 18-month schedule. So we're progressing, and we've identified resources to where we can move towards getting this done quicker so we can get to construction. But and in addition to that, understanding that this was a longer process, you know, I think it's safe to say that Madison County Supervisor Banks, Supervisor Griffin meet monthly to talk about, along with city officials, with the city of Canton, to talk about how we can identify, you know, things that within this plan, the county stormwater plan, countywide, but understanding what's going on in Canton, how can we identify some things that we can do right now? And so those projects that we pointed out earlier, those were just a couple of projects that we identified that we said that can be done now short term that helps contribute to the overall efforts to address the flooding and help mitigate the flooding within Canton. So those projects are important as well. No project is small, but it's contributing to the overall effort of what these supervisors and the board and other elected officials see in terms of the needs for the citizens in Canton. So we are moving forward in that direction to expedite this process.
Since you're on an 18-month schedule now, tell us what month and how far are you looking down the road to be turning over dirt? What month within? We'll give you a little leeway there. Probably about 30 days, 60 days. Cause the citizens can't want to know that. They want to know that. When are you gonna turn dirt?
So I guess covering all of the projects that we talked about, and Bill, I don't know if you can talk to the Bear Creek, but the EWP project that we mentioned.
You're ready to go out the contract. We're already.
We're ready. We're working with the contractor now to execute those contract documents, so that notice to proceed can be issued now to get that contractor going. The City of Canton's citywide drainage project, those 7 locations that we highlighted, that project, like I said, design is ready, bid documents are ready. The last box that we have to check, what I mentioned earlier, is the environmental permitting.
All right, what's the gap in that days though?
The gap in that project will probably be ready to actually see construction, dirt turning over. That will probably be March or April of next year.
March, April next year.
In terms of actually starting that project. That's what we project on that. So, you know, the Bear Creek project, Bill, I don't know if you can speak to that.
So the Bear Creek project, to your point, Supervisor, you know, this is a federally funded project that has to comply with all the environmental requirements and all that. But to the point of acceleration, Mr. Ivy and Soil and Water Conservation Commission, Mr. Ogie Lewis, Mr. Kurt Reedus from NRCS, and our entire project team, along with representative of the board, had a conference call 2 weeks ago with national headquarters of NRCS. We had the chief engineer of NRCS from DC, and we had all of his subject matter experts in Little Rock at the National Water Management Center who are going to approve this project. And we all got on the conference to talk specifically about that point. How can we accelerate this process? And when we got off the call, we all agreed that the end point of this phase right here, the planning and environmental, was to be 9 months. So they're talking that means then August of next year. You know, but if you look at the time frame that they said, you know, 9 to 10 months, but they were looking at August of next year being through with that process, so that you could, at that point, you'd have an approved project or projects that have been through the environmental process. You're ready to design them, which is about a 9-month process, and then you go to construction. So so NRCS National has agreed to accelerate their process as much as possible, which and they really dictate the schedule, but they've agreed to streamline that process as much as possible in order to get the funds allocated and ultimately improvements in the ground.
9 months.
9 months.
You'll see dirt.
Well, what he said. what I
It
heard,
ain't what he said?
now, what
All
I,
right, then, say that well.
what I heard,
Everybody here can understand.
let me tell you what I heard, and then you see if I heard it
You
right.
said that there would be,
I heard that
we're
it-
looking on a 9-month schedule to the end of the planning portion of it, and then you're looking at another
You
portion
got
of
9
time that
months
we've got
to
to
design
design
it.
it.
Got to design.
You can't design,
After that-
you can't design during the same time you're doing the plan.
To that point, on that call, they said, yeah, typically, you're right. You complete the design process, you get an approved project, I'm sorry, the planning project, and then you start the design based on that approved project. But they agreed that if we were to get toward the end of the planning process with no major hurdles identified, if we were, say, at the 90% phase, that they would be willing to go ahead and authorize the beginning of design so that we could get an early start and have some overlap in those steps. So,
I'm glad I kept asking that question for myself.
right. So what that tells you is the federal government that allocated the funding has gotten the message from somebody to work as closely as possible with the local government and the state government to get this done as quickly as possible through their, while complying with their process.
So, go ahead. There are areas in the city that are outside of a flood zone and still experience flooding, mainly the Center Street area. Just wondering if any of these measures that are being studied will address that flooding.
Depends on the nature of that, but I suspect by what you're describing, there are always going to be localized areas susceptible to flash flooding, particularly in extreme rain events. And most of the time that has to do either with the installation or maintenance, most of the time maintenance just of the localized drainage infrastructure. So regardless of what may be done under a program like this, there's always got to be ongoing maintenance.
I think this is a problem with maybe 100-year-old infrastructure.
Yeah. And that's a problem everywhere you go.
So that's really not being addressed as part of this.
Well, this specific program is more at the watershed, looking at the watershed scale, but there are other programs like the EWP project or other programs that are designed to look more at localized drainage infrastructure like you're referring to. And it's really got to be there's got to be a multi-pronged solution to this. No one of these things or these measures is going to solve all the problems.
What are those programs that would address the localized flooding?
Well, like I said, the Emergency Watershed Protection Program is designed to restore infrastructure that's impacted by extreme storm events. But then just the basic localized infrastructure maintenance, is something, that's a more of a challenge because there's not typically a dedicated revenue stream such as with water or sewer service. So you have to come up with creative ways to generate revenue for those types of maintenance issues. And I know that's another thing the county, we haven't talked about it, but that's another thing the county is looking at is how to set up some type of system to generate sustainable revenue for operation and maintenance of stormwater infrastructure.
So I got a house on Isabella Street, and I don't understand the watershed management effect and the Bear Creek watershed. How are you guys going to improve, I don't know if it's called Bachelor's Creek or Crystal Ditch, so that I can put flood insurance on that house?
That's the EPA project, right?
So I'm not understanding y'all language when y'all talk about the different projects.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in particular on Isabella Street, that I own a house, but I don't know if it's called Bachelor's Creek or Crystal Ditch, where that overfloods. Which one of these projects is gonna benefit my house on Isabella Street?
Madison Creek is crystal.
Okay.
Okay, and I think we've got some EPA money, and we're working on some localized ditch work inside the city of Canton. I think the city of Canton has some funds they're trying to keep a lot of this water away from Canton, and that comes through along Bear Creek, get it through the, 55, because Bachelor Creek is hitting it and backing up to Isabella and Martin Luther King and all that. So we can stop the backup and also help with the internal drainage. Then you should see, the elimination of the flood situation.
So as constituents, your engineers are saying 18 months to start seeing dirt. For constituents, what are our short term, what is the county and the city of Canton doing now while they develop this plan to put it in progress? What is
The internal stuff is, we've got one contract already let. We'll be letting the the city should be letting their contract within the next, at least by March. So the internal things are still going on. So trying to help with the local, with the internal drainage that's something that's going on. This major, watershed project is one, it takes on a different life than the internal stuff. So they got the money and the funding for the internal project, and that's what is going to, help with your situation on Isabella Street. We're trying, the watershed is really trying to slow down and keep some of this, water that's coming from, as far away as Gluckstadt, from coming past your house on Isabella. So, and redirect it, hold it, but so there's a twofold situation going on. There's a maintenance thing that has to happen too with the city of Canton and Madison County, but at the same time, we did secure funds to do something with local internal drainage.
So I'm glad you went to the Gluckstadt area, in particular Harvey Crossing. There's a ditch that runs through there. Some owned by Harvey Crossing, some owned by other people. Once this watershed is complete, and I'm thinking maybe 10 to 15 years later, that eventually there will be some flooding issues there because that ditch is overgrown. In particular, 12 years ago, the board voted to put rocks in that ditch to make it similar to the Crystal Ditch or Bachelor's Creek. Is there a project being in place so that even in 15 years, where I currently live, where I live is, yeah, but I own a house on Isabella as well. So it's gonna fix the flooding there, but in 15 years, it could possibly start to flood in that Southwell Road, plus that creek, that ditch that runs through Harvey Crossing, that whole area drains to that creek. So 15 years from now, how are we going to benefit that area as well?
Well, hopefully, this project, we're looking at the whole entire watershed. We're looking at that area, that every tributary of that's trying to go there, we're looking at every last one of them. So this project is a project for that helps the try to slow down any kind of flooding that's happening around Yandell Road, Harvey Crossing. That's this project. That's the watershed plan, and that's a picture of your watershed. That's all the water, all those little. It's probably showing most of the major tributaries, but those major tributaries are being created by the minor tributaries, the smaller ones that's coming through your subdivision and other subdivisions. That's where they're trying to go. So all that's being studied by the engineers. They're studying the whole watershed. That's what's taking so long, having studied the whole watershed. And then at the same time, once they find out what they got and try to make changes, you got the other arm of people, of the environmental people saying, well, you gotta go through us and we gotta sign off on this. You got another federal arm that says you gotta sign off, make sure there's no historical artifacts or anything being disturbed. It's a process. It's a process. It's not, stopping the water from going where water wants to go is not something that you can just, like in the house, turn the hydrant on. I wish it could, but it is a major process, we're trying to work on everything but the emphasis that that started this whole project is because of the major flooding in Canton. So we're trying, we have been identified, we identified Canton as being the major problem. The federal government in Washington identified Canton as having a major problem. So that, but at the same time, we decided to do a watershed study and not just look at Canton. We looked at the whole watershed, and they're looking at the whole watershed. So Harvey Crossing is a part of that watershed.
So, and no kick at this engineering company. Rudy Warnock did a study some years ago. This is not just a study and it's gonna go sit on a shelf.
Well, let me explain something to you. Rudy's never done a
Well, he
study
did it for
this
the-
extensive.
Okay, all right.
There's never been a study done in Madison County this extensive. Now, there have been some, I've heard of studies that's been done in the city by different engineering firms. But they were just looking at the city. They weren't looking at where the water comes from. They didn't even look at the fact that the water's coming from way down here in Gluckstadt.
Some of them from
Past
Madison.
Gluckstadt, some of it from Madison, the north part of Madison. There's a ridge that runs through here. Everything, every raindrop that hits down that way is trying to get to that big black river up that way. And it's gotta go by all these houses and plants and everything else to get there. We've learned a lot in what we've been working on this for a while, as you know. We started that watershed study in 20. We funded the watershed study to get started. Since that time, we were able to pass that off to NRCS, and they said, hey, we want you to continue. And that's why they funded this, to continue the study and learn more and come up with a plan. So, and my questions have been to them, I'm waiting on the plan. You know, I know that it floods. I know we got issues in Madison County. I'm looking for the plan. I'm just impatient. I'm looking for the plan.
Well, and to that point, NRCS allocates that funding for construction. I mean, their goal is the end product, but they know to get there, you got to do the planning and the environmental assessment and the design. So this is on a cycle. So, I mean, we're required to take it all the way through. We can't just do a study and then put it on the shelf. I mean, this is intended to put something in the ground, you know, to implement improvements.
That's something new to implement.
Well, and this was no kick at nobody, but I know the city of Canton, in front of every mayor, have done a flood litigation plan.
Mm-hmm.
They just wasted money on the plan instead of wasting the next mayor pick up the ball.
Right.
Or, yeah, putting a study together instead of the next mayor picking up the ball and running with it.
But we're charged with taking this all the way to construction. We will be constructing something, shown several things, and so it's gonna be a multiple task. And, you know, we all know, that's why I pointed back to 55 and Bear Creek. We know that's definitely got to change. We were hoping, too, that we would get something in terms of retention where we can use that twofold for, in terms of having a water source, maybe, but also having a recreational and type facilities for our families. So there's a couple of things happening there in terms of the retention area. But the other areas, we just gotta get the drainage right.
If in getting the water under the Interstate 55 is the task itself. You know, you got to cut north and south. You got to get a bigger area going underneath it. So traffic gonna be backed up. You got to go through MDOT. So
If I could too, just
Yeah.
make a statement, you know, and we talk about time, everybody wants this done. I
Yeah,
assure you, we do
yesterday.
too. Because we want to get the help on the ground. One thing I want to keep in mind, you were talking about, what are we going to do in 15 years? And one thing about this plan that we're talking about, this plan, I mean, we think of it as a plan because ultimately we want to construct something, but the underlying things that are within that plan are going to be something that does sit on the shelf and is used for years to come. This is basically, we're writing a 1,000-page book report on what the water does in this watershed. So there'll be some implementation that's going to be done to fix the issues now. But this environmental assessment, which is the document that is required to access federal money, is going to be complete. It may have to be updated as years go by because things change. But keep in mind that you don't want to, I know everybody wants it done fast. We want it done fast, but we want it done right.
Yes.
And so rather than talking about getting it done fast, we're doing as much work as we can to get this done, but we don't want to get a plan done in 9 months and come back and they say, that doesn't even make sense. This is such a very complicated problem, and so it takes very complicated measures to get it fixed and a lot of hydraulics and engineering work to understand. You know, you think about all the water, everywhere that water can flow in what did you say, 155,000 acres or something like that? You're talking about a huge area. I mean, if you pour a glass of water out, you go somewhere, you know, and so we have to understand that before we can understand the measures to fix it and fix it for the future. So I just want y'all to know we are working, and these guys have done a great job in the time that they've done this. This is 18 months sounds like a long time. That is like that number is expedited in a great way. I just finished an EA that took 6 years just for the plan. I'm not picking. I just want y'all to know that we're working as hard as we can. These guys have put a huge amount of effort and expertise into getting it there. Please be patient as we go through this because we want it done right, and I know y'all do too. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. Thank you. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm Nick Ivey. So I'm the Executive Director of the Mississippi Soil and Water Conservation Commission. The money comes from the federal level, NRCS. We partner with NRCS, and we do the contracting of the engineering and that kind of thing. So we basically take the money and handle the project until it's done. So, and we appreciate, I will say while I'm talking, while I've got the floor, I mean, you guys should be proud of the fact that you've got leadership here that have the forethought to let's look at what can we do. I mean, it's obvious that they care about the problems there. So I'd like to thank everybody that's a part of it. It took folks saying we need the plan. It took us saying we got the money for the plan. It took these guys saying we'll design the plan. It took a lot of work to get just to this point. And so it's not easy. Rome was not built in a day. But we do want to make sure that the ultimate goal is that when we get to the end of it, that the product that we put on the ground fixes the issues. Whether it's fast or slow, if we do it wrong, we're going to be in trouble, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have another meeting and it ain't going to be this nice. So we don't want that. But we want to make sure that we address the problems properly before we walk out of this project.
So he got the money, not the city or the board of supervisors.
No. I got the money, I'm saying I have the money.
Yeah.
I didn't go get it.
No, I'm
They
just
just
saying.
passed it to me to take care. I am the trustee of their money.
Yeah. We just want to let everybody know the board of supervisors not holding it.
Yeah, that's what they
Oh,
think. The
right.
city or the board of supervisors just holding the money.
And we appreciate the board of supervisors. When we sat down at the beginning of this thing, we had a discussion about it. You know, do y'all, we do these things. This is what we do a lot of. We'd be glad to help you with it. And so it was a community decision for us to do it this way. But it is, there's a lot of logistics that don't get seen on these types of projects. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Nate.
Yes, sir.
Yep,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Anybody else?
I just had,
Seemed like there was a-
going back to his situation on Isabella Street as an example, are we looking at a timing situation so if we start doing local repairs, you said on Bachelor Creek, before we have figured out what's going to happen with the watershed, are we getting ahead of what we need to? So let's just say you do the work on Isabella. Water's still coming into Canton because we haven't addressed the southern part of the county yet. Will that damage what has been put in place on Isabella, or are those two separate things?
I'm gonna let the engineers answer that one, but I believe that one of the problems that we have in terms of drainage system. So by fixing the drainage system in Canton, it's going to, because that's gonna help spring it to even accept water coming from somewhere else. So this
And
fix
the measures that they're
doing-
installing there are gonna make sure that that creek is there and not gonna erode and cause other problems. What they're doing in that is gonna make sure that it stays there permanently. So, if you keep the maintenance up. So much of what we do is about maintenance.
Yes, sir. I was gonna say, inside of Canton, I noticed, the Easter flood of 1979, we had words of rain in some of the places in Canton where it flooded now. It didn't even get down that bad. Right now, I noticed some of the creeks, like right about the John Deere place and the snow by the fire station. Once upon a time, you could see the riprap and the rock they had laid there. But now you go by there, you can't see anything now. You got sycamore trees don't grow up in there. You got whatever that tree you call it, weeping willow, all those. I mean, you can't see that. And so if the water y'all said come all the way down here, go to Madison, make a U-turn and come back up here, with all that thing right there, if all those trees and things, like I said, they grew up, I don't believe it, probably about 25 or 30 years. I don't know if they clean no thing. I mean, there's trees up there bigger than I am tall, and growed up in those trees, clean from the all the way back. Because if I lay down on Cairns Range Road, I noticed for the last, this past spring, the water was going 12 Bear Creek out there going in the Big Black. I mean, it filled that road up in where the water can't go that fast. It come all the way back up, cover that road to 22. It come up in all to my driveway. But what I'm saying is though, all from there, from a clean out from uptown there, on that creek, I don't know what is it, what name that creek?
Crisso Ditch.
Crisso Ditch, and there's another one. All of those, check and see for yourself. They got trees, done growed up. Once in a while you can see the ground, but you can't see anything now. And see, that's what water get there. When it get there, those trees got it flooded out, and the water just run all over your house and everything. I mean, you say it's gonna take 18 months just for to get those trees, moving dirt. Do that mean get no trees out of, get no trees? That's all I got to say.
So primarily what this gentleman is talking about sounds more so on the maintenance side of things. And that goes back to what was said earlier. All of these programs that fund infrastructure improvements, majority of them do not fund maintenance. And that's one of the things when we pursued these funding opportunities, and I'll use the EWP, the Emergency Watershed Protection Program funding in particular. Those representatives from NRCS came out and did a site visit, and that's one of the things that they come out to verify, is to make sure that this request is not because of deferred maintenance. So it goes back to what's been said before. You know, in terms of infrastructure improvements, we can replace the aging infrastructure, but there's also a responsibility to maintain that new infrastructure to prolong its life, so it doesn't get back to where it its current condition or previous condition. So, excuse me. So that what you're saying in terms of grown-up vegetation, trees, that's maintenance that is performed by your public works crews on a day-to-day basis.
That would be the city of Canton, Madison County, right?
Yes, sir. If you're within the city limits, it would be the city of Canton. Yes, yes, sir.
All right, anybody else?
Just one thing.
Yes.
Basically, like Curtis is saying, that's the same thing goes for the Crisso Ditch. And I know Mr. Cotton have done some work right in at that bridge. He cleaned that, and now we can see the rocks. But beforehand, that water, when that water hit there, it hit the banks, as he stated, trees. But you just can't clean one area for to take the water out of what I was looking at. And so back up the Crisso ditch out to 43. Trees. So I just see the water gonna back up. When water hits, water gonna go downhill. I don't care where it's at. It ain't going uphill. So we're gonna have to do some maintenance. Is it inside maintenance or outside maintenance?
We all agree with you, and that's one of the things that we've noticed. We've been talking about in our meetings. We have a watershed meeting that Darren talks about. We have once a month. We have members of the city council meeting with us, other individuals that work for the engineering companies, the city council people. They have somebody that comes in. I think we even got public works coming now, and we're asking the city to do a little more maintenance, a lot more maintenance. Personally, I agree with you. I remember the flood in August of 22, and a week before it flooded, I was driving, and I told my wife, I said, we passed over Bachelor Creek, and I said, it's all grown up. Water doesn't have anywhere to go. It's got a flood. And a week later, it was flooded. So I agree with you. And if we, you know, the Board of Supervisors, Madison County and Madison County's Road Department, we try to help. The city asks us for help, we're gonna help. So right now, and the reason we call this meeting was to hear you. And I know we're gonna hear from some people that are looking or will look at it online. But we need to always hear what you have to say, because all we're trying to do is solve the problems that affect you. We can't solve your problem if we don't know what your problem is. So I appreciate all of y'all coming, and I'm cracking the whip on them, trying to speed up things, and I think they are doing a great job, but I want to see more work. I want to see more maintenance. I want to see our ditches cleaned, and that's something that has to be done between Paul and I and the city council. They have to get with us. They have to ask us, can we help? They have to tell us what they're going to do, and we'll tell them what we can do. Thank you all for coming.